One of my favorite musicians, well actually a few of my favorite musicians, have started making some social media posts where they endorse one candidate perhaps, or maybe an entire political party, or even something just as simple as commenting on a piece of legislation that's in the government right now. And every time they do this, whether it endorses right-wing or left-wing ideology, the comment section for that post goes absolutely wild. It just goes crazy with comments such as, shut up and play your songs. You gotta be a big fan of someone to say something like that. Or, no one asked for your political opinion. Keep playing your music and leave politics out of it. So, today I want to talk about the question in the title of this video, but also, what should these artists do at a time like this? What should they do? Well, let's dive in. So this video is being recorded just a few days before the election. Things are getting really close, really dicey, and I have seen artists that haven't made Facebook posts, some of them even in years, get back on Facebook to make an announcement of which candidate they've endorsed. So should artists be doing this? And on a deeper level, what is the historical relationship between politics and performing artists? Well, we're going to take a look at some examples today that I think will show that politics and performing musicians have an almost inseparable relationship. So as I was thinking about what to talk about in this video and also reflecting on those reactions fans had to these Facebook posts, my mind turned to two legendary figures in kind of like a political music genre. And those are, of course, Pete Seeger and Woody Guthrie. And my first thought was, what would happen if they were around today singing their songs and had a Facebook profile? Probably people would be absolutely going crazy on them every second. But thankfully they didn't have Facebook back then and they were able to sing their songs. But let's think about that. You know, I grew up hearing those names. Probably two of the first musicians I ever learned about were Pete Seeger and Woody Guthrie. Every musician I know is aware of them. Many have been inspired by them, and many even have learned from them. For example, with Pete Seeger's banjo instruction book. But what is their repertoire? Think about it. What really is their repertoire? It's more than just folk songs. Their songs had a progressive political agenda to them. They had a very strong, crystal clear message in them. And they were fighting for things back then that ironically we're still fighting for today. I'm not sure if they were the first two to really be so bold, but I think they were among the first musicians to really be so bold and direct with their lyrics and how they express the political content to them. Well, since then we've had countless other musicians that followed in their footsteps and have performed amazing repertoire fighting for social progression, etc. through music. So, you know, they kicked it off and we're still going today through music, through the power of song. And remember Rounder Records, we talked about them a few weeks ago. They even had an entire section in their vast catalog of music that was dedicated to political or social releases. It was any of the albums that started with 4,000 in their catalog number. And these albums dealt with such topics as greener energy, and we're talking like 3 decades ago or so that they're doing this. Women's rights, liberation movements in Africa, the dangers of coal mining, songs for peace, and much more. And I think this is just amazing that such an iconic record label such as Rounder Records even had an entire section of their catalog dedicated to this. I think it's just another example that shows that politics and music are quite inseparable. Let's take a look at some of those albums that Rounder released.
We've got, and if you want a better life, you gotta make a change. And if you wanna make a change, you need a union too. And if you want a
contract that keeps the worker free, and they'll never shoot that union out of me. And they'll never shoot.
So everything I've told you up to this point, I think would fall into the category of political music that directly expresses the viewpoint of the author or leaves no question to what the message of the song is. And I think we can look at political music in two categories, directly and indirectly. And when you have music such as folk music or punk music or really any music with lyrics, you're having political music expressed directly through the words. And that's maybe the easiest way to do it. But classical music, which is something more familiar to me, is not exempt from being political, but it would take more of an indirect approach because all classical music, except for operas or a few other things, have no words. It's all instrumental. So, is this possible? Yes. Let's take a look at two of my favorite composers that actually do just this. But before we go to the classical music, I want to give you one person to look up. I will have links to these two projects in the description of this video. But that is Talem. Talem, I've talked about a lot on these videos. He has an amazing new album, actually 2 volumes of an album out that are all political songs. And he also has a project from before in Italy titled Sagodi, and that is one of my favorite bands ever. It is so, so good. So I'll have links to those, and I highly encourage you to check out that angle of political music and then take a look at these two composers now. First composer we'll talk about today is someone that truly embodies everything about politics into their music, and that is the Italian composer Luigi Nono. I learned about him briefly during a college composition class, and I think we spent just very little time on him, and we only looked at his use of electronics in his compositions and a few points about his compositional approach, including like harmony and tonality, things like that. But ironically, nothing was mentioned about his strong political ties and affiliations. I did not learn about this until actually the beginning of this year when I was just doing some reading and research on my own, and come to find out that he was strongly involved with the Communist Party in Italy and had pieces of music dedicated to revolutionary figures all around the world, including people such as Karl Marx. So this is a very indirect way of expressing political opinions. So here he has instrumental pieces. He did have pieces with lyrics, so that of course is direct. But he had a lot of instrumental compositions that if you just sit down and listen to it, you don't know it's political. But then you look at the title and it's dedicated to a leader of a party, or it's dedicated to a philosopher or someone like Karl Marx. So then it absolutely does have a political identity. But I think this is actually really interesting because if you don't agree with his political approach, I think it's very easy to separate his incredible music and appreciate that by itself and separate that from a political approach that you may not appreciate. And then you can just enjoy his music for the incredible sound that it is. And also, if you don't speak Italian, then you really won't have any problem because all the lyrics are in Italian. But Luigi Nono is an amazing composer and just someone that really was, I don't think there was a more politically active composer ever. And it's just incredible that we can hear his music. The second composer that I want to talk about today is someone that has had a huge impact on not only the sound of my music, but also on the personal way that I approach composition and music as a whole. And that is the amazing composer Galina Ustvolskaya. And she is, I think, an incredible example of expressing politics through her music, but she does it in a way unlike anyone we've talked about so far today, and unlike anyone we could have talked about today. She didn't have any text. She used political text, that is, in her pieces. She didn't use political titles. She didn't dedicate it to any political leaders anywhere. Instead, in a way you could say, she sacrificed her entire career, and she sacrificed a comfortable life out of political perseverance. Her music was too abstract for what the Soviet Union wanted, and as such, she was purposely rarely programmed in concerts or commissioned for new pieces. She is reportedly to have died with literally nothing, and her last meal was a piece of bread that she asked her neighbor for. Very sad ending from one point of view. From another, it's one of pure bravery. She took a stance against a massive political regime and didn't back down. Let's take a listen to a clip of one of her pieces so you get an idea of what her music sounded like. Now back to the title of this video. Should musicians be political? In every aspect, I say absolutely yes. Political and musical expression are so intertwined that they cannot possibly be separated at this point. And furthermore, we have the right to make that expression, and sometimes it's truly a necessity, such as someone like Galina Ustvolskaya, who was simply trying to change the outcome of lives of composers in that era. And that's why everyone is singing a political song or dedicating a piece of music to a political ideology, is if not to make a change in their lives, to make a change in the lives of future generations. But for now, no matter what genre of music you like, no matter what political ideology you are, no matter where you're at with all of that, I really want to thank you for staying with me on this video, for tuning in and listening, and for joining the discussion. As always, please feel free to leave any questions or comments below the video. If you have any suggestions for future topics, I'd love to hear it. And maybe you have a favorite political album or artist that you'd like to share, because that's what I really love doing on these videos, is sharing music with one another. So let's keep the discussion going, and until then, I will see you next time, and please go vote. Thank you.